We're going to spend some time now talking about the trade plan. The trade plan is really the heart of Trade Unafraid. And so a couple of little sayings, I guess, would be useful here. So failing to plan is planning to fail, and plan your trade and trade your plan. So the first thing you need to know when you get a server set up with Trade Unafraid is that you have to go here to this cogwheel and set up your user preferences. And most importantly, you need to set up your trade plan user preferences. And so here you can see the things that are important. Everything in your user preferences can be overridden when you create a template and then an active trade plan. But this is really going to make things much easier for you if you get this stuff set up in your user preferences. So first thing is you need to select your brokerage. Right now we support Tradier and Simulated. Obviously, if you're trading real money, you need Tradier. And then you select which account, and then your data source. So during market hours, you can trade with live data if you have a Tradier account that's providing live data. But at any time during the day, you can actually use simulated data, which doesn't do a great job of acting the way a regular market does, but it gives you movement, and that allows you to test out trade plans. A really important thing to select is quantity basis. So basically, you can select that you want to trade a number of shares or option contracts or based on dollars. And so if you select dollars, then depending on the price of whatever instrument you're trading, the software will figure out how many you can fit into that size trade based on the dollars you've allocated. Obviously, if you select quantity, then it's really up to you to decide what you're going to trade and what quantity makes sense. Work orders, you can turn this on or off. This basically, and I'm not going to go into great detail about all of this. I'm trying to kind of do a high level here. But work orders will attempt to get you some price improvement by getting filled inside the spread. And by the way, this little icon will give you pop-up help. Anywhere you see it, you can hover over it and get information. The next thing is instrument. If you select stock, then it's very simple. You're just trading shares. If you select option, then there are several things that go into that. And again, I'm not going to go into great detail here, but long or short on the options, you can select whether you want to trade in the money or out of the money. You can select whether you want to trade options that expire today. This obviously has meaning on a Friday, or if you're trading SPY, then Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You can select whether you want to trade the tightest spread of the options that are available, or you can just say, I want to just trade one strike out of the money from the current price or one strike in the money from the current price. And then all of these are optional, but you can select these option filters to filter on tightest spread as a percent or dollars, and you can include both. You can do price range so that you only want to trade options that are greater than a certain price or less than a certain price, as well as quantity range. So one thing you have to be aware of is that you could potentially set up a scenario where no option passes these option filters, and therefore, even though your setup gets triggered, you don't actually enter the trade because your filters filtered it out and there was nothing available to trade. There is a place where you can see what that current situation is, but this, dynamic quotes are always coming in, so that situation can change. So just be aware of that. The other thing is when you have multiple expirations available, you can say that you only want to trade the front expiration, meaning the nearest expiration, or all of them, and you can also say none. This checkbox is whether you want to flatten before the market closes. So you can have open trades, and this will make sure that you're flat by market close. If you don't check it, then if there's nothing triggers that gets you out, then you'll actually hold overnight. So be aware of that. The default size of your trades can be set here. Now you notice this says dollar stock, dollar options, quantity stock, quantity options. So that dollar and quantity is based on the quantity basis. So these are your preferences. So we allow you to set up both dollar quantity basis and quantity basis. And this is for stock and for options. So basically, whatever quantity basis and whatever instrument, we're letting you set your default size there. Of course, all of this can be overridden when you're actually setting up a trade plan. This is just your user preferences. There are multiple entry tactics: market, limit, and candle break. And this allows you to select which ones are on by default and what other parameters are there by default. And again, there will be other videos where we go into more details about how these work. And then there's all the different exit tactics. And here in user preferences, you can decide which ones you want automatically available, so that if you enter a trade very quickly, all of these configurations are going to be used if you don't override them in your trade plan. So that is user preferences, okay? So now the next thing is setting up a template, which is not what we originally called this. We originally called them configurations. So we're going to have to, change the UI to reflect this, but we are calling these templates. And so these are trade plan templates, which allows you to basically set up and save a trade plan that you can reuse. So for example, I have a Tesla break price template, and so it pulls up Tesla. It pulls up all the default configurations as I've set them, and then it has a break price, and I have to just go in here and put in the price that I want to break, and then everything just is pre-configured for me other than that. So the things that you need to be aware of in a trade plan. The first thing is a setup, and you need exactly one of those. So these are the setups, and every one of them has some hover help here, but depending on which setup you select, you will have different configurations that go here. So here, for example, if you trade the strat, there are candle patterns that you can set up. I'm not going to go into how you do that here, but every one of these setups has its own configuration underneath it. The next thing is set up filters. So underneath setups, you can select setup filters, and each of these has its own configuration. So for example, if you're trading the strat, then you can set up full time frame continuity filters, meaning when your setup triggers, the setup will either pass or fail your filters, and that will determine whether you actually enter a trade or not. So whatever setup is here, the filters have to also allow it in order for you to move forward and enter, okay? And these are all optional. You don't have to use any of these. You can use multiple. So, here we have a time of day filter, for example. So if you don't want to trade after 11 a.m., you could just put in 11 here. And now, no matter what setup it is, the time of day filter will stop you from entering after 11 a.m. All right. So the entry tactics, you need one or more, and that's an important thing to keep in mind. Even though most of us will only want to use one of these, we actually set it up so that you can use multiple. So be careful with that. You can have a market order and a limit order and a candle break. If you do this, you will actually have 3 different entries on this trade plan. So just be aware of that. Limit order is specific to the time that the setup triggers. So you can just create a plain old limit order, but you can have a limit order that is based on the setup. So it's a little bit safer than a market order. Okay. Position tactics. You don't have to use these, or you can use one or more. Right now we have scaling in and add to a winner. So that's a way this is basically doubling down where you can, if price goes down to a certain point, you can add more. And this is adding on something that is going your way instead of against you. But those are both available. And then the exit tactics. And remember I said, whatever you have in user preferences will be set up here by default, but then you can override it in this template. So everything here can be adjusted, but your user preferences are your starting point. Okay. And so that is a template. And then you go from here to an active trade plan. And so your template doesn't have to include a symbol. It doesn't have to include really anything. A template could be virtually empty. But when it comes time to actually have an active trade plan that is watching the market and ready to trade, then you have to specify everything. So we need to know the symbol. We need to know the direction. We need to know which account you want to trade, your option selection, your option filtering if you're trading options. And one other thing I'll mention here is that the option selection is kind of a 2-phase process. So you can specify things like your expiration, and you can add these and delete them. So you can decide whichever expirations you want. You can specify, based on direction, long or short, whether you're going to trade calls or puts. But then down below, there's all of the criteria that we're going to use to select from this universe of options that you have specified. So it's kind of like here, you tell us which options you're willing to trade, and then here we are going to select down to the individual contract that you're going to trade. And so, we're going to use whatever strategy you specify here, like tightest spread just means from the ones you've allowed up here, we're going to find the tightest spread we can to trade for you. And then we're going to apply these option filters. Or maybe you just want the one out of the money. But it still has to be in this list that you've provided. So we won't trade anything that's not in this list. If you click select options, then you get a list of options. You can say, I want the whole list, or I just want to trade the 360s. So you get to specify which options are available here, and then we will choose from those the best one that suits all of your criteria, and that includes option filters. So notice here, this shows 0 and it's red because nothing is passing from this list that is tradable. And that may be based on quantity range. It may be based on spread. I'm doing this on the weekend, so I'm not sure, how much we can trust the quotes right now. But that's an important thing to notice, is that no options are actually going to meet your criteria. So your setup may not trade. All right. So that's probably enough for this video. I just wanted to give kind of an overview of how trade plans are the heart and soul of what Trade Unafraid does and everything that goes into them. So look for more training videos from us. Thanks a lot.